It's week 3 of the Diddy trial, and things are only getting more intense. If you thought week 1 and week 2 were wild, please buckle up your seats. This week, the courtroom heard explosive testimony from Sean P. Diddy Combs' former assistant, who was going by a pseudonym to protect her identity. She is going by the name Mia. Mia worked side by side with Diddy for nearly a decade. She is also one of Cassie's close friends. She painted a chilling picture of power, manipulation, and control that came by the hands of Diddy, and this even included some SA allegations. Meanwhile, there were also some crazy headlines that came outside of the courtroom that also had to deal with Diddy, and these came straight from the White House. At a press conference, President Donald Trump was asked if Diddy was convicted, would he consider pardoning Diddy? Here was his response. He quoted saying, "Nobody's asked, but I know people are thinking about it," he said. He also said that he hasn't followed the trial very closely, but would look at the facts if asked. With Diddy facing serious charges like the following: sex trafficking, racketeering, conspiracy, and transporting women for prostitution, he's facing possibly life in prison as a maximum sentence. So every single detail in this case truly does matter, down to the evidence and the witnesses. This is the point of no return, where we are breaking it all down every single day of the Diddy trial. I'm Amanda, one of the co-hosts of the podcast. This is a special compilation of my daily real-time TikTok videos called Courtroom Clarity that we are giving you every single day, now wrapped into 1 week of the Diddy trial. Here's week 3. Let's dive in. If you guys don't convince him of that, I'll unalive all of you. This is something that Diddy said to Capricorn Clark, his ex-assistant, in 2011 after he broke into Kid Cudi's home. I'm Amanda from the Point of No Return, a true crime podcast, and we are covering the Diddy trial day 10. So today, Capricorn Clark took the stand, and she testified literally all day long. This is going to be a head scratcher and a juicy one, to say the least. So from 2004 to 2006, Capricorn worked as Diddy's assistant. You may hear me call her Cap just to cut it in half, okay? Then from 2008 to 2012, she worked as his director of marketing for Sean John's Women, okay? Then after that, she was terminated in 2012, but came back in 2016 as the creative director for Cassie up until 2018. When she was Diddy's assistant and assistant only, at the beginning, she was only getting paid $65,000. One of her first days of work, she ended up getting sized up by Diddy. So this is what happened. Capricorn had a history in the music business prior to going to work for Bad Boy and working for Diddy. She also worked at Def Jam, and she also worked for Death Row Records. When Diddy got wind that she worked for Death Row, aka Suge Knight, he was pissy. Him and one of his well-known bodyguards that goes by the name of Uncle Paulie, he's a big guy, they go and they take Cap to Central Park and they have a conversation with her. Here's a piece of the conversation. They said something along the lines of, he told me he didn't know that I had anything to do with Suge Knight, and if anything happened, he would have to unalive me. That is what she testified today in court. Capricorn said that she continued to work with Diddy because she felt like she could have been more transparent. So she kind of blamed herself in this instance. Another thing that she brought up today was something that Diddy's other assistants also brought up: lie detector tests. So there was some jewelry that went missing at one point in time. Diddy was loaned some jewelry from Jacob the Jeweler. Y'all, I'm sure if y'all follow hip hop from the early 2000s, you remember Jacob the Jeweler. He also got caught up in the BMF scandal. Research that for yourselves. So Jacob the Jeweler loaned Diddy some jewelry. Somehow the jewelry is misplaced. Capricorn is then the next day, instead of going to work, she is picked up by Diddy's team. Diddy goes to Miami, and she is left in New York, and she is taken to a dilapidated building where she says she sits down at a 6-foot-long fold-out table where she is met with a man that she said is 5 times her size, drinking coffee and chain smoking on cigarettes, and he presents her with a lie detector test. He then tells her during this lie detector test, because she's so nervous, that if she does not calm down, he would throw her in the East River. She was then taken back to the same building for the next 5 days straight. She would then go through more lie detector tests. She says she kept going back because she needed to prove her innocence, and she felt like this was the only way to prove her innocence. She says she didn't report this incident to the police because she had already signed an NDA. After this, she said she went back to work with Diddy, and it was like nothing had happened. The first time that Capricorn left Bad Boy and left Diddy was because of an incident that happened in his Miami mansion. So she was already a little annoyed with the way that things were going, and she just kind of disgruntledly complained to the chef about them not having turkey bacon. not having turkey bacon. This is what happened. The chef then goes and tells Diddy about it. He comes back inside. He says, if you hate it here, get the F out of my house. Diddy also at this time gets in her space, touches her, and this is when she says, nah, this is too much. He crossed a boundary. However, 2 years later in 2008, she returns to as the director of marketing for Sean John Women. So she said that she returned because she knew that she wouldn't be directly dealing with Diddy from day to day. During this time, she would occasionally hang out with Kid Cudi, she would occasionally hang out with Cassie, and they all became friends. She said around November 2011 is when she figured out that Cassie and Cudi were dating. She also testified today that she was very concerned that the two were dating, and she told Cassie, if you're going to date Kid Cudi, you should probably get a burner phone, because at the time, Diddy was still paying both of their phone bills. However, it didn't work. He still found out anyway. On December 22nd, 2011, Capricorn Clark said that Diddy came to her house and was banging on her door with something that sounded like it was metal. This was between the hours of 5:30 a.m. and 6 a.m. She opened the door. He had a gun in his hand. She also mentioned that he had a rip in his crotch and he had on slacks. I don't know what that was about. The first thing that flew out of his mouth to her was, why didn't you tell me? And he was referring to Cassie and Kid Cudi's relationship. The next thing he told her was, get dressed, we're going to unalive him. When she tried to refuse, this is what he told her. He said, I don't give a F what you want to do, go get dressed. So they traveled in Diddy's Escalade with one of his security guards to Kid Cudi's house that morning. Capricorn said that she stayed in the car and she was able to call Cassie on Cassie's burner phone. She testified that she told Cassie that Diddy showed up to her house with a gun, after that kidnapping her, forcing her to go to Kid Cudi's home so they can do something to him. At the time, she also changed Cassie's name on her phone to Stormy, her burner phone to Stormy, so Diddy wouldn't know who she was calling. In the background of this call, Capricorn could hear somebody in the background saying, he's at my house. This is when Cassie said, oh, I'm with Cudi. Capricorn also testified that at this point in time, she called Lauren London to speak to her as an insurance policy, just to let somebody know where she was. She said at the time, she looked at Lauren London like a sister, so she needed to tell somebody where she was. When Diddy got back in the car, he asked her who she had been talking to, and this is what he said. He called the burner phone, and he looked at her call log. He said, B, who the F is this number? I'm trying to stay censored, y'all. I can't even take myself seriously. Capricorn then testified that Cudi gets there and he pulls up in his Porsche alongside of Diddy's Escalade, and then he zooms off. Then the Escalade chases the Porsche and Cudi is able to lose them. By the time they lose them, the SUV turns back around, and by the time the Escalade turns back around, they see the sirens coming, and that is what calms Diddy down, and he's like, all right, maybe we should go home. But it didn't end there. The next thing that happened was Diddy then told Capricorn and Cassie both that they needed to convince Cudi, hey, do not tell the police a thing. Here was a direct quote from her testimony. She says, if you guys don't convince him of that, I'll unalive you all. Following this incident, Cassie also sent Capricorn as well as her mom an email describing everything that happened that day. Soon thereafter, Capricorn will also talk to two bad boy executives, Harv Pierre as well as the head of HR, and tell them about the kidnapping. Harv would then tell her, that's crazy, but it's going to be okay. It actually wasn't okay. By August of 2012, she would get her walking papers. She said that she was on vacation. She was still being sent work while being on vacation. And by the time she got back, she was fired. She told HR that Diddy was retaliating against her because she didn't inform him that his girlfriend was dating Kid Cudi. She was terminated shortly after this, and the reason was because she took improper vacation. She also testified that soon thereafter, she won a wrongful termination lawsuit because of this. They never disclosed what the settlement was. But she did say because of this, Diddy threatened her that he would blackball her and that she would never work again, and that kind of came true. His direct threat to her was, this is what she said, that I would never work again, that he would show her that she has no friends. He would make me unalive myself, is what she testified. She also testified today that as late as 2024, she had another opportunity to work with Diddy as potentially being his chief of staff. Her and her attorney met with Diddy's lawyers. After this initial conversation, they never met again. There was also talks from Diddy's defense about her possibly having a crush on him at one point in time, but she said the text messages were taken out of context. She also testified to Cassie's disposition over the years. Here was a quote that she said about Cassie in 2016 when she came back to work for her. She said her drug use was preventing her from the opportunities that were before us. So she was so drugged up, she was saying that she literally couldn't even work. She also testified that Cassie was less devoted to her career when she began dating P. Diddy. So Capricorn has kind of solidified a lot of what we already knew, but today she was able to expound a lot more on the Kid Cudi incident that we've already heard so much about. So tell me what you guys are thinking in the comments and what she had to say, because this is now his third assistant that we've heard from, and there has been so much abuse. Also, tomorrow on the stand, we're supposed to hear from Mia, who is an alias for one of his past workers that is testifying against him for the prosecution. So much more to come tomorrow. Stay tuned in with us. If you have not caught up on week 2 of the Diddy trial, please go listen to the Point of No Return Courtroom Clarity episode, week 2 of the Diddy trial, featuring me. And we have so much more in store for you. Talk to you soon. Day 12 of the Diddy trial got real. We are introduced to victim number 4, who is going by the name Mia. That is also an alias. She would testify today that she was not only abused, but are aped by Diddy, as well as a myriad of other things. Tap in with us. I'm Amanda from the Point of No Return, and we are covering the Diddy trial. Mia worked for Diddy from 2009 to 2017. Another crazy tidbit is her and Cassie became very good friends, and they're still friends to this day. Mia alleged that the first time Diddy assaulted her was on his 40th birthday at the Plaza Hotel in 2009. She remembers having 2 shots with him, and the shots impacted her a lot more than they normally would, and she lost her balance. She said that he approached her in the penthouse. She remembers being assaulted, and she woke up the next day in a chair. She also testified to abuse, saying, quote, "He's thrown things at me. He's thrown me against the wall. He's thrown me into a pool. He's thrown an ice bucket on my head." When Mia first started working for Diddy, she said she was about 25 or 26 years old. And here's the crazy exchange that happened when she first interviewed for her job. She said that she went to his apartment, that's where the interview was, and that he answered the door in his underwear. She described the work environment around Diddy being chaotic and toxic. She was supposed to be working about 40 hours a week, but she said she would always go over that. One pattern that I'm also starting to notice is that a lot of these people, even though they're working for Bad Boy, and we're not talking about a lowly group of musicians, we're talking about Bad Boy, Diddy, P. Diddy. These people are making chump change to be his personal assistant. She started out making $50,000. I don't care if it was 2007, $50,000 was her base pay. She was supposed to be making $55,000. Mia will also testify that at one point in time during her employment, she didn't go to sleep for 5 days straight, and she maintained herself on Adderall. Here's a quote. "My hearing went. I felt like I was underwater. My equilibrium was off." She said her vision was blurred, and while on the stand, she even burst into tears today. She also wrote that at one point in time, Diddy would ask her to do 17,000 things a day, and this could include things as random as cracking his knuckles or asking her to write his next movie or doing his taxes. And speaking of writing his next movie, her other position with Diddy was the director of development and acquisitions with Revolt Films. She also testified that as his personal assistant, she was never able to leave his house without his permission. She also wasn't allowed to lock the doors inside of his home when she stayed there. However, she did say that Diddy would be motivational from time to time, and he would give her pep talks, and this would give her a little motivation to stay around. This is also in alignment with something else that Diddy's other workers have said in the past as well. Here's more about her relationship with Cassie. She said, "We became like sisters, best friends." She even talked about Cassie's relationship with Diddy. She said there were a lot of highs and a lot of lows. But the bottom line is she testified that allegedly he was abusive towards her. Mia also confirmed what a lot of people have already told us about Diddy's actions towards Cassie, that he would continuously be controlling, and that he also decided things like Cassie's nails, what she would wear, her hair, and also that he would take things away from her like her keys, her passport, so on and so forth. She also said that the attacks would happen so often. At one point in time, she said she saw Diddy throw Cassie on the ground and her head crack open. He chased her. She also recalled the jumping incident that we talked about yesterday as well. She said when she saw Cassie's eyebrow gushing with blood, that's when she knew that they were in over their heads and this was too much. So prosecutors asked Mia about a Prince party back in 2010 that happened after the Emmys. Mia and Cassie said that they were staying at a hotel together without P. Diddy and that they were planning on going to the party. However, Diddy told them to stay inside of the hotel room while he was going to hang out with his kids. She said they debated like teenagers if they were going to go out or not, and then finally they decided, we're going to go. She said at the party they had a good time, they hung out, Prince performed, and then walked in some BET execs, and then walked in Diddy. They locked eyes with him and they ran immediately. She said, in quote, Puff caught up to Cass and had her on the ground. He started to attack her, but Prince's security swiftly intervened. So she said that the next day, she was also written up at work and that she was suspended without pay for being insubordinate. This also mirrors the time that Mila Morales was talking about when she said that P. Diddy burst into Cassie's bedroom at that hotel after an awards show in 2010, and he beat her up really, really badly. This was that same weekend. We also got a little bit more insight about freak-offs. Mia testified that she knew freak-offs as hotel nights. In being Diddy's assistant, sometimes she had to clean up these hotel nights. She described the aftermath of them as a nightmare. Here's a quick description. She said that there would be candle wax everywhere, wet towels all over the floor in the rooms, also broken glass, water all over the floor, sometimes even blood, which they said P. Diddy described as period blood. She also said that hotel nights were followed by long stretches of rest that the couples would refer to as man down. And she said that these man down periods would last for about 2 to 3 nights. There was another incident where Mia said that P. Diddy threw a bowl of spaghetti at her head. Another incident where he took her phone and ran with it so he can try and get some information on her. Allegedly, he was really abusing her while she was at work, threatening her. Prosecutors also allege that Diddy groped her and are also alleging that she had to do some kind of oral activities with him as well. Back to the Plaza Hotel during Diddy's 40th birthday when she says she was first SA'd by Diddy. Initially, she just remembers him getting closer and then his mouth was touching her. She said she didn't know what was happening, but she never vocally said no to him. During another instance, she said that she was sleeping in a spare room in his house. Again, remember, he said that allegedly she could not lock the door in his house. He snuck into her room and that when she woke up, he was on top of her. She said that the assaults were very random, very sporadic, and spread out. However, she said she never vocally told him no because there was no denying him. She was afraid of the repercussions that would come behind it. She also testified that allegedly Diddy used these assaults against her and said that if she told anybody, that he would tell Cassie. Mia also testified that she didn't believe telling the police would work. Based on previous interactions with the police that she's seen, the police would probably be on Diddy's side. She described a time that she got pulled over by LAPD and they let her go without a ticket because she called P. Diddy and they let her out. The cops approached pretty aggressively, and once they saw Puff, they were like, oh my God. Meaning they were really excited that he was on the phone. She also didn't feel comfortable telling his chief of staff because she testified that allegedly another assistant told his chief of staff about abuse that they saw and they were fired. While also on the stand, Mia testified that this was the most shameful thing of her life. However, she said that she's talking about this now because when you're scared into silence, these things continue to happen to others. She also said that this is something that she absolutely thought that she was going to take to her grave. However, she needed to talk about it. So Mia will be back on the stand tomorrow on day 13 of the Diddy trial. So tap in with us, catch up on our past videos. If you haven't caught up on week 2, tap in week 2. And until tomorrow, I'm Amanda. Tell me what y'all think. What is going on? We have a new witness and we also have a new victim. Victim number 4, aka Mia, and there is a lot to unpack here. I think it's also so interesting that Mia is Cassie's homegirl and also one of Diddy's prior workers. What do y'all think? Kid Cudi might have been onto something calling Diddy a supervillain. Today, Deontay Nash would testify in court that him, along with Diddy's ex-assistant, who they're calling Mia, would jump Diddy in Cassie's defense, and he would still fight them off and still manage to beat Cassie up so bad that she gashed her own eyebrow. I'm Amanda from the Point of No Return, a true crime podcast where we're covering the Diddy trial day 11. Tap in with me. So just for a little more context, here's a little more about what happened. So Deontay Nash said that they were getting ready to go to a music festival and in walks in Diddy. He says, B, didn't I tell you to answer the phone? And he literally pulls her off of the couch by her hair. This is when Mia, his former assistant, and Deontay then jump Diddy. She hits her head on the bed frame and then Diddy responds with noticing a lot of blood and he panics and he tells them, look what you made me do. Deontay then attempted to call 911 and he was immediately told to hang up. This was also an incident that Cassie testified about 2 weeks ago. And before we continue, I just want to give a congratulatory message to Cassie. She delivered her baby. So Deontay worked with Cassie from 2008 to 2019. He also made it very clear that he did not want to come in to testify today. He also was very clear that him and Cassie are still currently friends. He told us some of the names that Diddy used to use when talking to Cassie. The names included the following: baby girl, CC, Cass, bitch, slut, hoe. But he said bi was Diddy's favorite word to use when talking to Cassie. He also testified, as we've heard from other witnesses, that Diddy would often threaten Cassie. There was also a point in time where he said that Cassie and Diddy were into it and Diddy was upset with her and he threatened not to release her mixtape, saying things to her like, "I'm not gonna release your little mixtape if you keep having a smart ass mouth." He also testified that one time he saw Diddy punch and beat Cassie so bad in the head that she began to bleed. He also testified about another occasion where he saw Diddy berating Cassie about an SEX tape that he would also release or send to her parents if she did not do as he said. Deontay also brought up Cassie's 29th birthday. This was a birthday that Cassie also testified about 2 weeks ago. This was a birthday where Cassie said she did not want to participate in a freak off, but Diddy coerced her into doing so anyway. Deontay remembers them going out to dinner in Los Angeles that night, and then they went out to do karaoke. He said that he overheard Diddy complaining to her, saying, "You can't just do this one thing for me." Deontay then said he asked Cassie, like, "What's going on? What's the tea?" Cassie then told him, "He's just mad because I don't want to go to the hotel and freak off with him." He said that this was the first time he ever heard Cassie use the term freak off. After they left karaoke, they went back to Cassie's house. Soon thereafter, Cassie told Deontay that she had to leave because she was going back to a hotel with Diddy. When he asked her why, she replied and said this: "He's making her go do that shit." Deontay also testified that Diddy and Cassie both appeared to be visibly high at the time. This also tracks to what Cassie said about her taking K and other drugs just to disassociate at the times of freak off so she would not be available. Deontay said that he also reported Cassie's abuse to Christina Karam. However, the abuse continued. He also testified what we've heard many times before from Cassie's own mouth, that she was coerced, that she did not want to participate in freak offs. And he even testified, telling the court that oftentimes when she would go to these hotels, that she would take a black bag with her. The black bag would include SEX toys and other things used during freak offs. Deontay's testimony will continue again tomorrow, along with victim number 4, who is also Mia. Mia is also Diddy's ex-assistant who was involved in the jumping of Diddy earlier in this video. We also heard from 2 other significant witnesses today. One was the police officer that showed up to Kid Cudi's house after he reported the burglary of his home, and then also the investigator of the arson of his Porsche. Officer Christopher Ignacio, who reported to the burglary at Kid Cudi's house. He testified today that he reported to Kid Cudi's house in December of 2011. When he got there, he was there because he was patrolling the neighborhood and he heard about a potential burglary at 8:20 a.m. He also testified that he noticed a black Escalade parked outside of Kid Cudi's house when he got there. He said as he pulled up, he noticed that the SUV took off up the hill. He couldn't see any passengers because of the tint on the car, but he did make note of the license plate. About 15 to 20 minutes later, he noticed that the same SUV was passing the house again. When he ran the plates, he noticed that the car was tied back to Bad Boy Productions. When he entered Kid Cudi's home, he also noticed that no one was home. However, there was a lot of high-valued items on the counter as well as scattered around the house that were open from Christmas gifts, which also corroborates Kid Cudi's story from last week saying that they opened the gifts inside of his home. He also testified that Kid Cudi was flustered, very flustered, when he showed up to the house. Next, we'll hear from the arson investigator, whose name is Lance Jimenez. Investigator Jimenez showed up to Kid Cudi's house on January 9th, 2012 to investigate the arson of his Porsche. He said that he observed this: a cut in the canvas roof of the vehicle and burn patterns throughout the seats, the center console, the interior roof, and some on the carpet. He determined that a Molotov cocktail was the reason for the damage. He testified that a designer-type handkerchief in this case was made of a silky type of material, and it fell out of a 40-ounce Old English malt liquor bottle. As a result of this, the bottle didn't explode and the gasoline didn't disperse. So this is why the car didn't combust or didn't really explode in the way that it should have. Had the bottle broken as intended, he said, the damage to the car would have been far worse and the fire could have spread surrounding the vegetation or to Kid Cudi's home. He also testified that he believed that this was a targeted attack. He said that the bottle, the lighter, and the cloth were all tested for DNA, but only the bottle turned up with partial results for DNA. And of course, as we already know, this DNA came out to be a female's DNA, but what female, we don't know. However, this is when it gets interesting. Investigator Jimenez also said that there were other fingerprints taken from the crime scene. He said that these fingerprints were also given to the LAPD in 2012. However, he was never given the results of the fingerprints because they were destroyed. So this is when court actually comes to a dramatic pause, because he said that the fingerprints lifted during the trespassing probe were destroyed. So now the defense is arguing that the testimony about the fingerprints needs to be stricken from the record. Why? Because now they are inferring that P. Diddy somehow tampered with evidence and got a hold of these fingerprints and threw them out from LAPD's possession. So one of his defense attorneys actually, this was a quote, he said, "What the government has done is outrageous." And the judge actually agreed and struck it from the record. Because of this, Diddy's legal team actually moved for a mistrial at this time. They moved for a mistrial because they're accusing the prosecution of misconduct. What is the misconduct? The misconduct is they are implying that Diddy has destroyed evidence involving these fingerprints from the LAPD. However, the judge denied that motion. He said, no. Y'all not getting off that easy. So there's a lot more coming tomorrow. Again, we'll hear some more from Beyonce as well as Mia as we wrap up day 12 into the Diddy trial. Stick with us as we unravel more in this case. Diddy's ex-assistant Mia would testify in court that he told her, "You better learn to walk on water like Jesus," after he allegedly trapped her on a yacht in 2010. This all happened on day 13 of the Diddy trial. So this incident took place on New Year's Eve on the coast of St. Bart's. Diddy was upset that Mia was taking too long to count some money that he had on the boat. And after he became upset, she testified that she wanted to leave. Some of the crew members actually took her off of the boat and back to the main land. And then she realized that Diddy's team still had her passport, so she had to go back to the boat. Upon returning to the yacht from the failed attempt to escape is when Diddy told her, "You better learn to walk on water if you're trying to escape." After that, she was then met with Diddy also telling her the two had to go to Vegas and that if she didn't comply to go to the trip, that she would then be fired. Mia also testified about a time when her and Cassie went to South Africa to shoot a film. And during that time, she said that Cassie was ignoring Diddy because Diddy was starting to date Gina again, which Cassie testified about in court 2 weeks ago. During this time, Cassie was ignoring Diddy, so Diddy tried to get in contact with Mia. Mia was asleep. Diddy called Mia at least 48 times. She testified in court, also sending her a lot of text messages on WhatsApp. There was a huge time difference because he was in the US and they were in South Africa. One of the messages read this: "If you don't call me now, F it all, and I'm gonna tell everything. And don't ever speak to me again. You have 2 minutes. F her." She also said that he was threatening her job and he threatened to kill her at this time. She also shared more messages displayed about Diddy's volatile attitude at work. Another incident that she read aloud in court was an interaction that she had with one of Diddy's bodyguards in 2011 via text. The incident read, "He just went batshit crazy on me. He didn't see all of his workout options folded and organized. He then began cussing me out and getting angrier and going on a rant about the lack of options and how he hated certain things." So yesterday, she also talked about how volatile he was at work and how she experienced a lot of abuse at work, humiliation, things of that nature. So now she's texting one of his bodyguards to also tell him about how crazy he could be at work. And this was just over something simple like workout gear. In 2017, she finally quit Bad Boy. Upon her quitting, some of the Bad Boy executives told her to retain an attorney and negotiate her back wages as well as some of the bonuses she never got while she was working there. However, Diddy did not like that. He was enraged, actually. He texted her and told her that he felt like she was stabbing him in the back. This also resulted in her getting about a $400,000 settlement that she had to split with some attorneys, and she got a little over $200,000 out of it. The prosecution also asked her if you could erase any of this abuse and give the money back, would you just erase it? And she said, absolutely. But 2017 was not the last time that she heard from Diddy. In 2023, Mia testified that after Cassie filed her lawsuit against P. Diddy, that she heard from him. Here's what she said. She said that I threw my phone as far as I could and it went behind the couch. I ran outside. It was just so triggering. What she's referring to is a text message that was sent to her by Sean P. Diddy Combs and he was asking for her to publicly stand up for him and say that he was a stand-up guy after the accusations came out in Cassie's lawsuit. However, Mia said for months and months she dodged Diddy's calls. And the messages and the calls weren't just from Diddy, they also came from some of Diddy's security team as well. She said, I pretended like, yeah, of course I will, no problem, because she was terrified. Even up until last year, he was still texting her saying things like this. You were my right hand for years, so I just need you to speak to what you remember, who was even around me, and it would be good to hear your voice. But if you don't want to, it's all good. Just let me know. Love. And that was how he signed it with an emoji. So, you know, towards the end of his tenure, he was starting to call himself Love. You know, he was rebranding himself with different names every few years. A familiar name that we've heard from one of his other security guards, D-Rock. D-Rock also hit her up and was asking her to defend Diddy's honor. He testified that D-Rock was actually pressuring her. He was pressuring her to publicly support Diddy. She said that this made her feel uncomfortable. End quote, I wanted nothing to do with him. He also testified that honestly, this had a lot of long lasting effects on the way that she could work in general. So it was hard for her not only to find employment, one, but two, to keep the employment because of the mental effects that P. Diddy had on her in the workplace. So this is what she said. She said she struggled to find work due to long-term mental health effects. Basic interactions like responding to emails or simple questions became increasingly difficult to handle. That is what she testified in court. A direct quote, I would be triggered by really normal situations. If someone said my name from across the room, all those feelings of getting in trouble would come flooding back. And I triple guessed myself in everything I did. So she wasn't even confident in her own work. Then comes in the defense. So if you guys aren't familiar with the defense, honestly, from the defense to the prosecution, a lot of the attorneys in this case are really well-known attorneys. So yesterday, the person who did the cross-examination was the attorney Brian Steele, YSL Steele, as a lot of y'all probably know him. He was the lead attorney in Young Thug's case. So he did the cross-examination of Mia yesterday. And he relied heavily on Mia's social media postings. And this is what happened. He said that Mia's social media depict Diddy in a very positive and nice light. In October 2013, he said that Mia posted a photo of P. Diddy at Starbucks with the caption, and the caption read, just the #1 guy on the Forbes list getting me a vanilla latte. No big deal. So he questioned her and asked, you posted a picture of Mr. Combs, the person who terrorizes you. Fair? So Mia responded to him and said, Instagram is a place to show how great your life was, even if it's not true. I didn't want my family and friends to know the misery I was in. Of course you post the great times. And speaking of family, she also spoke to having to get permission to even see her family or to do familial things. And the biggest thing that stuck out was she said that she had to seek permission from Diddy to attend her grandmother's funeral. Her literal words was she had to beg to go to her grandmother's funeral. So according to court documents, CNN and the Washington Post, they said for about an hour, Brian Steele questioned Mia about her social media posts on Instagram. And he said, how do you have a good moment with Sean Combs when you're terrified of him? She responded and said, it's easy because the dynamics would shift. So when things were good, they felt really safe and we forgot. We almost forgot about those things. They also showed a photo of Mia with other witnesses that we've seen in this case. Cassie Ventura, Carrie Morgan, as well as Diddy and Mia. They were all at the Burning Man festival. The caption read, take me back. Brian Steele will also point out that in this picture, Mia's head was turned towards Diddy. Then he asked her on the stand, he said, and he terrorized you, right? Then she responded, yes. Brian Steele also questioned Mia about a birthday post that she posted for Diddy. So there was a video post where she posted about Diddy and she was basically singing his praises and saying how much she appreciated him and that she was excited and wishing him a happy birthday. So he highlighted the significance as the time that Diddy first SA'd and assaulted her was technically on Diddy's 40th birthday. So his question for her was, how can you celebrate his birthday? But in reality, that should be a traumatic day for you because it was the first time that he SA'd you. She responded and said, for his birthday, we were all expected to post something. So if you remember from yesterday, again, in the Plaza Hotel on Diddy's 40th birthday, Mia testified that allegedly Diddy SA'd her on his 40th birthday. She said that she was just eager to survive in a cycle of violence and abuse as a people pleaser. Here's a quote. "I was young and manipulated and eager to survive. I'm unraveling a lot of this now in therapy. Nobody was there to say that these things were happening were wrong. There was nobody around us that even flinched at his behavior. I was always in trouble and I was always trying to find a way to not be in trouble." P. Diddy could be getting out of federal prison before he even gets in. We know this week that President Donald Trump has pardoned the sentence of several celebrities, including Todd and Julie Chrisley and even NBA YoungBoy. However, he commented on P. Diddy. So he was asked if P. Diddy was convicted, would he consider pardoning him? And here's what he said.
When you hosted The Apprentice, you mentioned once in 2012 that Diddy was a good friend of yours back then. He has since found himself in some very serious legal trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Would you ever consider pardoning him?
Well, nobody's asked. You had to be the one to ask, Peter, but nobody's asked. But I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it. I think some people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. He used to really like me a lot, but I think when I ran for politics, that relationship busted up from what I read. I don't know, he didn't tell me that, but I'd read some little bit nasty statements in the paper all of a sudden. You know, it's different. You become a much different person when you run for politics and you do what's right. I could do other things, and I'm sure he'd like me, and I'm sure other people would like me, but it wouldn't be as good for our country. As we said, our country's doing really well because of what we're doing. So it's not a popularity contest. So, I don't know, I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me.
Mr. President.
Okay, y'all, so here's what's going down in the first 3 weeks of the Diddy trial. Okay, so by now we already know the first 3 weeks of the Diddy trial have been pretty wild. So we know that the trial officially kicked off on May 5th with jury selection, and that this is a federal court case, the United States versus Sean P. Diddy Combs. Diddy is facing the following charges: racketeering, sex trafficking, and transporting individuals for prostitution. So we began the trial with the prosecution calling victim number 1, who was Cassie Ventura, to the stand. Cassie was staying on the stand for about 4 days. For what we know about Cassie, Cassie is a performer, but she's also Diddy's ex. Much of the evidence so far in this case has been mirrored around Cassie and Diddy's relationship and the abuse that Cassie had to endure at the hands of Diddy. She described their decade-long relationship as a nightmare of coercion as well as abuse, often saying she also felt trapped. She would also describe hundreds of freak-offs that she participated in with P. Diddy. So you might ask, what is a freak-off? Really quickly, for a reminder, here's what a freak-off is. A freak-off is a sexual encounter that is fueled by drugs, where a male escort is hired by either Diddy or Cassie, and Cassie is in a sexual interaction with this escort while Diddy watches and directs exactly what the two are doing from the sidelines. And as we know, this often involves probably lube and lots of baby oil. Amongst other things, we also know she was physically assaulted by Diddy plenty of times as well. Here's another quote. She said, "He controlled every part of my life." So far on the witness stand, we've had about 20 different witnesses talk about their experience either working with Diddy or if they were in some kind of forensic role. So this might be a police officer, or we've had an arson investigator also testify. From the last 3 weeks of trial, here are some of the star witnesses that have helped push the case along. We already know about Cassie. Next, I'm going to talk about Capricorn Clark. Capricorn Clark is Diddy's former assistant, and she would testify that after some jewelry went missing, she was subjected to a lie detector test interrogation for 5 days straight. Diddy's security would pick her up from her house and make her go to a warehouse where she was interrogated by a random man, and she had to do a lie detector test. During some of her first days of work, Diddy also pointed a gun at her and also threatened to kill her at one point because he thought that she had relation to Suge Knight, because he knew that at one point in time, she also worked for Death Row Records. A final account that she had was about a time where she said that Diddy actually kidnapped her. This was when she said Diddy made her go with him to Kid Cudi's home because Diddy found out that Cassie and Kid Cudi were now dating. She said Diddy banged on her door early in the morning, and here was a quote. He said, "Get dressed," and then following that, she refused. He said he didn't care, "Put on your clothes." "We're going to kill this NIGGA," is what he said. Another bombshell was Kid Cudi. Kid Cudi would corroborate Capricorn Clark's story and Cassie's story, saying that Diddy also retaliated against him by not only breaking into his home, but also firebombing his car. Cudi is alleging that Diddy got somebody or himself to throw a Molotov cocktail inside of his Porsche in 2012, causing the car to blow up. An LAPD officer would also testify in court this week that upon arriving to Kid Cudi's house after the break-in in late 2011, that he saw an SUV fleeing the scene, and when he entered the tags in and he looked it up, the SUV belonged to one of Sean P. Diddy Combs' enterprises. So evidence. When we talk about evidence, the feds have raided 2 of P. Diddy's homes. They also looked at the hotel room that he was staying in upon his arrest in late 2024. Here's some of the things that they found: narcotics, lights, recording equipment, sex toys, shoes, thousands of bottles of baby oil, lube, and more. Many of these things that they would find, prosecutors are alleging, is what Diddy was using to fuel his many freak-offs. Since the trial has begun, I have seen the prosecution use witness after witness to really drive home the point that Diddy used his businesses and his enterprise to carry out illegal acts. Federal prosecutor out of Detroit by the name of Mark Chucktow said this. He said that he's dealt with a lot of federal racketeering cases and, quote, that this testimony is certainly helpful in painting a sinister picture or image of Combs, of his manipulation and his coercion, his control and his violence, which will be beneficial to the prosecution down the line in terms of gaining the jury's sympathies that this guy was up to no good and needs to be put away or at least held accountable. What he was talking about was Capricorn Clark in this particular instance. However, a lot of P. Diddy's lawyers are saying that he was just a man with a kink. Yes, we know that he was violent. He beat up women. You've seen it on tape. We got it. We understand that. They were very forthcoming with that down to the opening statement. They said that, yes, he was violent. However, that is not what he's on trial for. He may have some different qualms about him. He may have some kinks, but he is not a sex trafficker, and these RICO charges should not stand. Another point that the defense has also been able to stand on is that many of Diddy's workers have stayed with him for a very long time, or they have gone back to work with him time after time after time. This has also been because Diddy has done a very good job of keeping his workers there and elevating them from assistants to chief of staffs, from assistants to directors of different branches of companies that he's had, from Sean John to Revolt, wherever it may be. He has elevated these people to different positions in different companies, so they've stayed with him to move higher up in their company. Many of them have also, even after seeing abuse and saying that they quit because of the abuse, have maintained some kind of normalcy or relationship with him after the fact. So the defense is saying, if he's so bad, then why did you stick around for so long? Why did you still maintain a relationship with him even after working with him and you said that he was an abuser? But a lot of the witnesses are saying, hey, we stayed in a relationship with him because we were scared. We didn't know how he was going to retaliate. He has this on me, or he said he was going to put this sex tape out of me, or whatever the case may be. That was something that Mia also said. She said that she was afraid that Diddy would use whatever sex tape or information he had against her out against her, because her and Cassie were friends, and at the time he was dating Cassie and he SA'd her. Interesting thing about this case is a lot of the victims or witnesses in this case teeter the line between being accomplices, victims themselves, or co-conspirators to a lot of Diddy's crimes. A lot of his assistants admitted on the stand to buying drugs for him, setting up freak-offs, so on and so forth. Even though the prosecution is still rolling out their case, one thing, again, that they are making sure that they do to tie him back to that RICO is that they are tying all of his doings to his businesses and making sure that they are tying it back to also the people that he works with to establish that enterprise. Prime example, also his security guards. They have named a lot of his security guards a lot to tie in the fact that they are doing his dirty work for him under the table as well. So what's next? The prosecution is looking to rest in mid to early June, and they're hoping to close this case out by the 4th of July. Stay tuned. It seems like we have a few more weeks of the Diddy trial and a lot more to unpack. If you have any questions, feel free to comment to us. We're on TikTok every single day of the trial, but of course, we have our podcast that gets uploaded every single Monday with new recaps, new thoughts. If you guys have questions about anything, you want to chat with us, hit us up on IG, hit us up on TikTok. And until next week, I'm Amanda with The Point of No Return. This is Courtroom Clarity, the Diddy Trial Week 3. Talk to you soon.
Audio Jungle.